What trivial fact do you know, only because of your job? Book barcodes always begin with 978. Always. Well, 99.99% of them. I once found one that started 979, and it blew my freaking mind. I told my coworker, and he looked at me like I was insane. The average length of a real estate agent's career is about 4 months. Accountant. That if your figures are out by an amount that is divisible by 9, you have probably transposed a number somewhere, that is 45 instead of 54. Oxygen is considered to be a drug because a physician has to prescribe it before it can be administered to a patient. The reason many TV shows have holiday special episodes is because TV viewership is very low the week of Christmas, but if they call it a special they don't need to include it when they calculate their average ratings for the season. Also, the day Americans watch the least amount of TV is the 4th of July. Babies don't have patellas, kneecaps, and it's super freaking weird. You know those vintage looking shirts at the store that are distressed on the print? It saves the company a ton of money on ink costs. My boss says that trend is what made him a millionaire. Tulips will continue to grow, on average, 2 inches more after they've been cut. Generally not while they're in cold storage, but once they're in a warmer environment. So many companies will let you walk in, say I'm with a computer company, and walk out with a computer. Forklifts should lift loads only 4 inches off the ground during travel. Ground moles have kitchens just like us. They will paralyze earthworms, their primary food source, by biting its head, and will drag the worms to a designated burrow where they store the bodies to save for later. The pink hand soap in most public restrooms is almond scented. In the state of Nevada, only licensed private investigators are allowed to work as mystery shoppers. The most common type of stainless steel is grade 304. The second most common is grade 316, which is used for food and surgical purposes. Python, the language, was named after Monty Python, the comedy group, not after the snake. Pizza delivery drivers, in a perfect world, are supposed to only carry $20 in change. Typically two $5s and 10 $1. Excel files from versions prior to Microsoft Office 2010 only go up to 65. 536 rows. Excel files from versions of Microsoft Office 2010 and on go up to 1048. 576 rows. I work in print shop that also takes passport photos, and I've noticed that an overwhelming number of people slightly tilt their head to the right about 1 to 3 degrees. A few people have perfectly aligned heads and fewer still tilt their heads to the left. 1 hour photo doesn't exist anymore. VHS starts to degrade pretty hard after 12 or so years. Don't keep visual data in weird proprietary formats, because chances are you're never getting it back. It's really expensive to print from film these days. Get your best old family photos scanned before they succumb to time. Get pictures of your friends and family, because you're probably not gonna care about that pretty scenery pic in 2 decades. But you want good photos of the ones you love when they start to die. Save your best, most treasured digital pics to a best of folder on a regular basis. You take more pictures than you think you do, and having some go-to-good shots is really nice. G-spot vibrators and prostate vibes are completely interchangeable. Half the time they are the exact same mold and motor, just a different color plastic and different packaging. In fact, half the time I'll sell a Judah G-spot vibe because I have a better selection of them. Christmas season advertisements are photographed in/around July. I worked on a dairy farm and learned that cows love getting the insides of their ears cleaned. When a person is drowning, they do it silently, unless they've got an injury, in which case they'll be very loud, or dead. Noah Webster, of Webster's Dictionary fame, was the one to take the U out of color and advocate using Z's instead of S's as the British do. Realize V's realize, because his philosophy was new NATION equals NEW language. In Kansas, taking a hot air balloon ride is tax-free because it's transportation. But if it's tethered to the ground while you're in it, it's taxed as an amusement ride. Bit late to the party. Work in a grocery store. If you pay with a $100 note for an $11.15 purchase, you get one of every denomination in the tiller's change. In Australia. The 8 steps to properly lifting a box from when I worked at Ups like 4 years ago. 1. Get close to the box. Work within your power zone, shoulders to mid-thigh. 2. Position feet shoulder width apart. 3. Bend at the knees keeping the natural curve of the back. 4. Grab the box from opposite diagonal corners. 5. Test for weight and shifting contents. 6. Stand up in a clean swift motion. 7. Move your feet. Step or pivot, don't twist. 8. Use existing equipment if need be. The pop connected to the tubes behind the soda fountain is stored in plastic bags inside flimsy cardboard boxes on a rack. Some theaters in your area may have sensory-friendly screenings, mostly geared towards children with autism and other disabilities. The lights remain dim instead of off. The volume is turned down, and there are subtitles. Getting up, walking around, and talking are fine. Occasionally one person has roughly 5 minutes to clean an entire theater. Theater employees are encouraged to see movies, so we can answer questions you might have about them. Except me. I will straight up lie to you wildly about the movie, based on my opinion of the last 5 minutes of it that I saw. But that's more of a trivial fact about me. No one can taste very well, and the wine/drink/cheese/food snobs are likely the worst. I'm a flavor chemist. If you cut yourself and bleed on a piece of fabric, dabbing at the stain with your own spit will remove the blood completely. This works only when the blood and spit come from the same person. Something to do with enzymes that are unique person to person. This has led to many bizarre situations in my workplace with 5 people huddled over a piece of fabric spitting on a bloodstain and saying, "See, I told you it wasn't my blood." Years ago I worked for a friend who is a surveyor. Survey marks everywhere, hidden in plain view. Babies born vaguely tend to have less respiratory distress than babies via C-section of the same gestational age, because the squeeze through the birth canal helps get amniotic fluid out of their lungs. Past job, but George Jenkins, founder of Publix, big grocery store chain in Florida/Southeast, was close friends with Walt Disney. Also the company still basically idolizes Jenkins like a cult leader. One paperclip left on the floor of a Boeing 747 costs that aircraft roughly an addition $100 per year in fuel costs. The danger zone for food is between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Food left out is unsafe after 4 hours. Customers are freaking morons, even the most educated ones. Government work is less about fixing problems and more about documenting that they exist. Juvenile sex offenders re-offend less than 6% of the time. Taking an ambulance to the hospital isn't a guarantee that you'll be seen faster. Falsely reporting that you're having chest pain in an effort to be seen faster will just get you an EKG and will run up your bill. You will not be seen faster, and it may actually delay your care. Medical errors are required by law not to assess your ability to pay before you've been seen by a physician. Waving around your great insurance will not help you be seen faster, and you don't have to hide your lack of insurance out of fear that you will be discriminated against. Most people below, at or slightly above the federal poverty level qualify for financial assistance through any not-for-profit hospital. This can range from $40, $100 and number 37 off of your hospital charges. While the law states that all emergency care must be paid for at the in-network rate, this regulation doesn't account for the contractual adjustment which can be passed on to you by way of balance billing. Some states, 2 or 3, have laws that prevent this, but most don't. This means that it's still advantageous to go to an in-networker, unless you have a life-threatening condition, loss of life or impossible. You can request for your ambulance to take you to the hospital of your choice. Clinical staff are generally shielded from any and all financial/insurance related information. This is on purpose. They don't know jack about billing or how insurance works. They don't care what insurance you have or whether or not you even have it. The exception is for discharge planning, when they'll want to align you with the best resources based on your coverage. You can walk into any and provide a false name, date of birth, and refuse to provide a SSN. They must administer care and have virtually no recourse when it comes to pinning down your identity, unless they have those scanners that map the layout of the veins in your hand and tie it to your records. This is certainly illegal, but no one has the bandwidth to deal with it. I very certainly don't recommend it, but the rate at which it happens is staggering. Providing a fake SSN will ruin this plan, though. Boys learn better in a colder environment. Separately, almost all dogs eat poop. Having a lot of Instagram followers can be pretty easily monetized. If you try to add thickener to drink, that is, in order to serve it to someone who can't drink thin fluids due to a medical condition, it turns into a weird foamy thing that is not satisfying at all. Power wheelchairs can cost as much as or more than an average car. Now think about the people who need them and how much money they may have. This one is trivial / not trivial. People with dementia are still functioning human beings with interests, needs, wants. For the ones that are still able to respond, they still want to have a life. Just takes some patience to figure out what they want and to get to know their peculiarities. To pity them and consider them empty shells is to do these people a disservice. That koalas are stupid, and some guy really hates them somewhere. Almost all radio DJs pre-record their shows, so when you're listening to your fav radio station on the drive home, odds are that was recorded hours in advance, if not days. Traffic lights won't change for emergency vehicles until the pedestrian phase is complete. The average new RV costs more than the average house. I grew up thinking poor people lived in RVs. That flood is a very specific sort of thing. When a pipe breaks in your house and fills the basement with water, that is not a flood. The earth is round. I work with radars. A UT in an elderly person will give them symptoms that are close to psychosis. Before working at a library, I didn't know there was a worldwide database of library records that contains over 1 billion records. I guess I thought that librarians read the books and made records based on that. Nope. In one abbreviated cataloging procedure, I spend maybe a minute per book. I used to work at Wendy's. Dave Thomas would only have chocolate milkshakes in his restaurant, something about it being his or his daughter's favorite flavor. Immediately after he died, they started serving different flavors. Anyone can call into most cell phone providers and say you're dead and cancel your service. We aren't allowed to ask for proof of death. And literally anyone can claim you have died, as long as they say they are family. We can't ask any questions. Just cancel the account due to death. RF radiation is non-ionizing. The wood of the barrel is responsible for the majority of the flavor in a barrel-aged spirit, such as whiskey. Checks are not processed through a live system. When a bank teller or cashier deposits a check, they are basically deciding if they trust you or not. That fish stocks in rivers are quantified by stunning the fish with electricity, then counting them when they float to the surface. Eurasia, Europe, and Russia have been at war for all time and can only be united by a Marxist capitalist system, which we can learn about by going through the productivity shield in the primordial soup to the alternate dimension where Karl Marx reigns. I work with schizophrenic consumers at a psychiatric hospital. My boss is a wanker. Mid-grade gasoline is just a mix of regular and premium. Ratios are generally chain specific. For example, my workplace mixes 60/40 regular/premium. You cannot add your siblings as a dependent unless they are handicapped big time. Fire extinguishers contain a siliconized monoammonium phosphate powder which in small dusting is good for your lawn. I worked in a meat shop. Don't store all meat above cooked meat, and always store chicken at the bottom, then pork, then beef, because they have different cook temps. Store bacon above everything else, because it's partially cooked, even if it's raw. Now I'm a health insurance agent. If your claim is denied, appeal it, and they will probably pay out, as in they pay out in 97% of appeals. From a previous job, Visa credit cards start with a 4, MasterCard with a 5, Discover with a 6, and Amex with a 3. The overwhelming majority of software that every single person uses every day is absolutely riddled with bugs. Belize does not have postal codes, and many other countries. We had to make postal code not a required field sometimes. That amazing stupid number of people don't know the difference between a debit card and credit card. A rectifier converts AC to DC. An inverter converts DC to AC. If someone says they do not have any more stock in the back, they don't have any more stock in the back. No one lies about that. Cows have a tendon running down the back of their necks that holds their head up. It's called a paddywhack, and you can dry it out and give it to dogs like a raw hide bone. That's the source of knick-knack paddywhack. Give a dog a bone. The heaviest stable isotope that we know of is Lead-208. That several millions of dollars does not take up as much space as you think it would. If in all $100 bills, say $5 million would occupy a space of about 3 feet long by 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall. Also you can fit about $450, 000 to $500, 000 in $100 bills in an average briefcase. I work with money in a large casino. Because AHL teams play an unequal number of games, clubs are ranked in order of points percentage, points earned divided by total points available. All Pepsi products expire on a Monday night. That wings are glued onto a plane. Regulation D is a federal regulation in the United States that means that you can only transfer out of a savings account 6 times per calendar month. This is to deter money laundering and people shifting money around in their accounts to hide its origin. My old job from when I was trying to work. But just like you have to clean a gelding or stallion's sheath and dingle, you might have to clean your mare's udders too if they get nasty. Some mares don't really get it, but others get gross. Cleaning a sheath is far weirder to non-horse people because you're literally putting on a glove, sticking your hand up into your horse's genitals, and picking smegma off of and out of his peen, including a bean inside his urethra. But udders on mares aren't something people even know horses have. Recently we've been talking about whether sheath cleaning is really necessary, but I've seen multiple geldings who were otherwise well cared for, but didn't get it done regularly, and ended up with problems. So I would definitely say you should just check if they need it regularly, and if it's nasty give it a wash. Mares too. In news and magazine articles, numbers 1 to 9 should be written with words, and anything 10 and up gets numerals. Wings will still generate lift in the event of an engine failure. The plane just becomes a glider. Essentially, everyone seems to think that an airplane will just plummet to the ground as soon as the engine stops working. Dogs have an extra gland on their tails. This is because the tail can be tucked between the legs to still give scent, but not have another dog smell their bits. On vinyl records, the tracks are set from the outside inwards, track 1 on the outside, track 6 nearer to the center. On CDs, tracks are set from the inside outwards. I volunteer in a nostalgic radio station. A lot of people, more than you would ever think, don't understand how basic math, measurements, or sizes work. The amount of times I've had to explain that the size of a frame is dictated by the size of the artwork, and not the overall size of the frame, like to the outer edge of the molding. Source, Amframer. The best time to call customer service is Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 11 AM. It's slow, and you'll probably get a tenured employee. If someone is in spinal shock, temporary spinal injury caused by swelling, you can monitor for when it resolves itself by putting your finger up their butt and squeezing their peen. If the butthole clenches, spinal shock has resolved. 4011 bananas. The way a supermarket is organized was specifically designed by the company based off where your eyes identify. Fresh fruits and veg are usually the first 2 or 3 aisles to promote healthy living. Alcohol will usually be towards the back away from the doors to prevent shoplifters and underage people from immediately going towards it. Every product has been pushed forward and fill in the space for you to see and reach with newer stock placed behind it. Stock you see on the end of the aisles are what they want to promote to you, and we have to ensure they are filled. Other stock they specifically want to sell will usually be on an eye-level shelf for you to notice. Is time waiting period in the support line too long? Call the sales line and tell them you wanted to reach the support. They put you trough to the support line and you may have saved a lot of waiting time. The microwave radiation from the sun kills satellite feeds 2 times per year. It's called sun outage. A really good predictive indicator for kids on the autism spectrum, even more than eye contact, is if they show joint attention. If they can play with their toy and avert their eyes to their carriage either for a second and then back to their toy. I work with kids in the 0-3 age range, so they are often at the beginning of their journey. Also, attention and imitation are the basis of language acquisition. If you can't get a child's attention, it will be awfully hard to get him to pick up your language cues. Those little lid supports in your pizza box, to prevent cheese from sticking to the top of the box, they're referred to as Barbie tables in the industry. The water they spray under rocket launches isn't for cooling. It is to help absorb the ridiculous sound waves from destroying the rocket or launch pad during liftoff. I'm an audio engineer. People don't really own all of their front yard. Usually several feet of it along the road belong to the government. Banquet menu would read like this. Homemade hash browns frozen actually. Maple bacon we only drizzle it with maple syrup. Farmer's scrambled eggs frozen eggs we cook in a kettle. And so on and on. If there's something that reads fancy, just doubt it right away. It's the way hotels justify to overcharge for the same food you can get any other less fancier place. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I'm too young to have a job. Harvested human eyes can be preserved for way longer than you think before being transplanted. They are also stored similar to pickled eggs in a jar with solution. Suffocation by nitrogen is a fairly painless, simple thing, because it doesn't trigger the choking response. You breathe normally till you get high from oxygen deprivation. Then you pass out and die. Little people and a cardboard cute out of a plane were used in the background of the final scene in Casablanca to get the proper scale in the studio. I used to write film trivia for an app my company created. I've researched thousands of movies, but this is one of the few bits that stuck. The stripes on US highways are about 10 feet long. Stripes in town may be shorter, but they are not the 3 feet everyone assumes they are. Also, California has an annoying number of different stripe patterns compared to just about everywhere else. There isn't really a thing like the real-time satellite surveillance you always see in the movies. Scheduling imagery from a satellite has to be done pretty well in advance, and downlinking that data to an appropriate facility might not happen for hours. Late to the party, but most people do not understand the difference between cuts of beef, aka steaks. The rich will only pay for the most expensive because they view it as better, and the not so rich people will only get the cheapest because they view it as a steak. Just so you know, a tenderloin steak is only so expensive because of how much waste there is in preparing it into steaks. Although it is very tender, it also lacks a lot of flavor that a ribeye or strip loin has. I prefer a high-grade strip loin to everything. Heck, I prefer a marinated flank steak to a tenderloin any day. Being photogenic does not guarantee good social skills. Money laundering, by taking a big sum of illegal money and depositing it in a bank a few dollars at a time, is called smurfing, because the smurfs were small things that added up. Anyone with a pulse and 18 semester units in a subject can teach for a year in California. Well, you need to pass a basic skills test or have high enough SAT/ACT scores also, but if you can't at least do that, I might question whether or not you have a pulse. Railroad tracks are 4 feet 8.5 inches apart, 143.51 centimeters, because that was the width of the wheels on Roman chariots, which was the perfect width for 2 horses walking side by side. Cheryl in accounting actually doesn't know everyone knows she is a lesbian. It's adorable. I'm a graphic designer. The reason letters are named uppercase and lowercase is because that's where movable type letters were stored in the days before digital publishing. When print was done by hand and letterpress, capital letters were kept in the uppercase of a letter storage cabinet, and the smaller letters were in the lowercase at the bottom. Bonus: what you may call a font is technically known as a typeface. Example: a typeface is Helvetica. A font is Helvetica condensed bold. Think of the typeface as the album, and the font as a song within the album. The media knows nothing about aviation and airplanes in general. Water weighs 8.34 pounds per gallon. Your house is built as crappy as possibly allowed. It may look nice, but there are likely improvements that could be done. The proper detergent measurement for your dishwasher is 1 teaspoon of granular detergent per 3 grams of hardness in your water. If you have a water softener, and you use pots, or whatever they are, you are throwing money away. You're more than likely using 2 or 3 times as much detergent as you need. You're probably causing a buildup in your dishwasher as well. Bus driver. 1 TONNE equals APPROX 15 people. How specific captain/mates like their coffee. Being a cadet is fun. A keg of drink you get at liquor stores is actually called a 1/2 barrel, and a pony keg is a 1/6 barrel. A 1/2 barrel holds 15 gallons of drink. A section of land is 640 acres. Rentals are a lot harder to maintain than people think. And just because it's a rental doesn't mean you can treat it like crap. Teachers 100% know when you cheat. The legal height limit for a truck in the state of Michigan is 13 feet 6 inches. The Sexual Offences Act 1957, UK, made it a criminal offense to have sex with an idiot. This act has been updated since, but it's still amusing to me. That lookup is amazing. Hand, foot and mouth disease is only communicable while you still have a fever. If a person is a renal failure person on dialysis and dopamine isn't working, they're probably acidotic. Push some bicarb. Dogs can be put on a vegetarian diet, but not a vegan one. You should also bathe your dog at least twice a month. I know too many people who let their dog go without bathing for months at a time. Bowling machines. Put the pins down in this order: 1, 3, 2, 4, 7, 8, 5, 6, 10, 9. Heart rate trackers on fitness watches won't give accurate heart rate readings if you have tattoos covering your wrist because the ink fricks with sensor. Guinness is actually a deep ruby color, not just brown or black. Try holding it up to the light. The US Postal Service is way more screwed up than the public knows. Fiber has to be spliced in clean rooms. Silly poodle haircut started out as protection for the joints and chest area. Also, it's perfectly okay to shave a double-coated dog. The rear axle on a tractor trailer can slide backwards when needed. Donating to a charity in someone else's name can be counted as bribery. Had to do some tests as I started working in the banking industry, and this came up as needed information. Morning wood isn't actually a morning thing. It happens every time you go into REM sleep. And it just so happens that people often are in REM before they wake up in the morning. So dudes, erections for a sizable chunk of the night. Radiation can turn the water in your body into hydrogen peroxide. Diamonds don't show up on X-ray because they have a low atomic number, being made of carbon, Z equals 6. There are multiple strains of cannabis that have share names. Off the top of my head, Rockstud can either be a cross of Rockbud and Sensi Star or a cross of Harmony and Bobakash. Additionally, there are a number of strains that have different names regionally. White Widow crossed with Ice is known as Iced Widow in the US, but called White Castle in Canada.